Welcome back again, and in this video we will continue with ESL terms you need to know. Constituent structure tree. This tree shows that a sentence is both a linear string of words and a hierarchical structure with phrases nested in phrases. It is the same as a phrase structure tree. Constituents, natural groupings of a sentence or the parts of a sentence. They stand alone, be replaced by a pronoun, or can be changed from active to passive. Construct is a description of the nature of the abilities being assessed. If one is developing an assessment of reading, he must define what is meant by reading ability. Constructivism involves the use of problem solving during tasks and projects, rather than or. In addition to direct instruction by the teacher. Computer-assisted language learning, CAL, implies learning by using computer tools to explore simulated worlds, to build presentations and websites that reflect on personally engaging and significant topics, and to undertake authentic communication with other learners around the world. It does not involve competence and communication in two languages, which is bilingualism. Content-based English as a second language. This approach makes use of instructional materials, learning tasks, and classroom techniques from academic content areas as the vehicle for developing language, content, cognitive and study skills. Content-based instruction, learning about something rather than learning a language. Content words, the nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs that constitute the major part of the vocabulary. Also known as open class. Context, helps students remember words and categories of vocabulary. The discourse preceding an utterance together with the real-world knowledge of speakers and listeners. Also known as linguistic context and situational context. Context-free grammar is a formal grammar in which every production rule is of the form V to W, where V is a single non-terminal symbol, and W is a string of terminals and/or non-terminals. W can be empty. The languages generated by context-free grammars are known as the context-free languages. A formal grammar is considered context-free when its production rules can be applied, regardless of the context of a non-terminal. Continuant, a speech sound in which the air stream flows continually through the mouth, all speech sounds except stops and affricates. Contonyms, also known as antagonyms, autoantonyms or Janus words, are words which, by some freak of language evolution, have two opposite meanings, according to the context in which they occur. For example, with can mean alongside, in come with me, but against or in opposition to, in Hannibal fought with the Romans. Contratones, in tone language, tones in which the pitch glides from one level to another, example, from low to high as in a rising tone. Contradiction describes a sentence that is false by virtue of its meaning alone, irrespective of context, example, kings are female. Also analytic, tautology. Contradictory, mutual and negative entailment, the truth of one sentence necessarily implies the falseness of another sentence, and vice versa, example, the door is open and the door is closed, are contradictory sentences. Also known as entailment. Contralateral refers to neural signals that travel between one side of the body, left/right, and the opposite cerebral hemisphere, right/left. Contrast, different sounds contrast when their presence alone distinguishes between otherwise identical forms, example F and V, in fine and vine, but not P and PH, in spick and spick, two variant ways of saying speak. Also known as minimal pair. Contrasting tones, in tone languages, different tones that make different words, example, in nup, ba. With a high tone and ba with a low tone mean, be sour, and count, respectively. Vietnamese and Thai are examples of tonal languages. Contrastive stress, additional stress placed on a word to highlight it or to clarify the referent of a pronoun, example, in Joe hired Bill and he hired Sam, with contrastive stress on he. It is usually understood that Bill rather than Joe hired Sam. Contradiscourse, opposite sentences. Convention/unventional, the agreed on, although generally arbitrary, relationship between the form and meaning of words. Cooperative principle, a broad principle within whose scope fall the various maxims of conversation. It states that in order to communicate effectively, speakers should agree to be informative and relevant. Cooperative Principles for Communication Sincerely, Maxims of Communication. Coordinate structure, a syntactic structure in which two or more constituents of the same syntactic category are joined by a conjunction such as an and or, example bread and butter, the big dog or the small cat, huffing and puffing. Coreference, the relation between two noun phrases that refer to the same entity. Coronals, the class of consonants articulated by raising the tip or blade of the tongue, including alveolars and palatals audibles. Corpus, a collection of language data gathered from spoken or written sources, used for linguistic research and analysis. Corpus callosum, connects the two hemispheres of the brain together. The nerve fibers, connecting the right and left cerebral hemispheres. Corpus studies, study of a databank with natural texts and transcriptions of recorded speech. Cortex, the approximately 10 billion neurons that form the outside surface of the brain, also referred to as gray matter. Count nouns, nouns that can be enumerated or counted, example 1 potato, 2 potatoes. Also known as mass nouns. Cover symbol, a symbol that represents a class of sounds, example, C for consonants, V for vowels. Covert prestige, a speaker that does not adopt the so-called standard dialect, and does this covertly, is said to have chosen not to adopt the standard dialect. Those who choose to not conform to the standard dialect may and usually gain prestige from their own social group. It is the opposite of overt prestige. Cranberry morphemes, bound morphemes that are not affixes, i.e. cran, rasp, etc. Alone they are not words. Creole, a language that begins as a pidgin and eventually becomes the native language of a speech community. The language pidgin develops into that is richer and more complex than what people heard and spoke while growing up. Creolization, the linguistic expansion in the lexicon and grammar, and an increase in the contexts of use, of an existing pidgin. Also known as pidginization. Critical pedagogy. A teaching approach that promotes students learning by questioning and looking at the real world. Their real world consists of their families, communities, friends, etc. The teacher talks with a student about these issues and they both pose a problem that could arise instead of problem solving. Critical period, the time between early childhood and puberty during which a child can acquire a native language easily, swiftly, and without external intervention. After this period, the acquisition of the grammar is difficult and, for some individuals, never fully achieved. C-selection, subcategorization, contains information of the complement types selected by particular the classifying of verbs and other lexical items in terms of the syntactic category of the complements that they accept. C stands for categorial, sometimes called subcategorization. For example, the verb find C selects, or is subcategorized for, a noun phrase complement. Cultural understanding in an ELL classroom. Cultural understanding include many aspects and is an important understanding for all people to have. Cultural understanding in an ELL classroom is extremely important because it helps to create a more effective learning environment for ELL students. Cuneiform, a form of writing in which the characters are produced using a wedge-shaped stylus, and most notably utilized by ancient civilizations of the Middle East such as the Sumerians. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I look forward to seeing you next time.